Hear about it. Talk about it now with Matt Patrick.
KTRH News Time is 7:15. Glad you're listening this morning. Joining me right now, former U.S. Attorney General Alberto Gonzales. And General Gonzales, thank you so much for returning to Houston's Morning News. Good to have you with us. How do you see the DOJ blocking the photo voter ID law here in the state of Texas? You agree or disagree with that?
Well, I don't know, quite honestly. I approach this issue from very different perspectives. As a former Secretary of State, Chief Elections Officer, one of my jobs was to try to get as many people to vote, qualified voters to vote as possible on Election Day. And as a Hispanic, I have to tell you, I want more Hispanics voting. I want them to exercise power. It's the one day of the year that it doesn't matter whether you come from Denver Harbor or Fourth Ward or River Oaks or West University. Everyone's equal. Everyone has one vote. And I don't want that power to be diluted in any way by voter fraud. So, it's important for me, from my perspective, that the people who show up to vote are who they say they are. And as a general matter, I don't have a problem with photo identification. We require photo IDs in connection with, you can't travel without one, you can't enter certain buildings without one, you can't make certain purchases without one.
Sure.
So why we would tolerate something less for something so fundamental as voting, to me, is rather counterintuitive. But the reason we're having this discussion is because there is a law, the Voting Rights Act, which requires certain states like Texas, whenever they make a change in the law that affects voting, Texas has to prove to the federal government that law will not have a disparate impact upon the voting rights of minority voters. And
General,
go ahead.
And I can appreciate that, General, but is this Voting Rights Act, as it applies to the state of Texas, is it archaic now? Is it time to move past this? Haven't we moved past this? Are we always going to be saddled with having to, when it comes to voting changes, turn everything over to the Fed?
From my perspective, I think it is past that, but Congress has made a decision. It was made during the years that I was the Attorney General and President Bush was in the White House, that it should continue for an additional period of time, covering states like Texas. However, there have been recent cases at the U.S. Supreme Court where several justices have questioned the wisdom of having a provision like Section 5, because after all, even without this pre-clearance requirement of Section 5, there are other provisions in the Voting Rights Act that would prevent discrimination against minorities in the act of voting. So, from my perspective, I think it is probably outdated. Again, I think it's very important that we protect voting rights of minorities, but there are other provisions of the Voting Rights Act that are intended to do just that.
We are talking with former Attorney General of the United States, Alberto Gonzales. And General Gonzales, we're very happy to have you with us. Hang on. When we come back, I want to talk about what voters can do, whether or not we're disenfranchising those voters that can't get that photo ID. If we find a way to move this forward, and I think we should, what can voters do who might be afraid they can't get that photo voter ID? Judge Gonzales, for those that find themselves out in the rural areas in the state of Texas, maybe you're a little concerned about getting to a DPS to get a photo voter ID. Is this really a problem? And does it appear on the surface that we might be disenfranchising those that are out in those rural areas, maybe the poor of the state?
Well, Texas allows various forms of photo identification to go vote. Many of them are absolutely necessary, in my judgment, to function in society, like having a driver's license or having a U.S. passport, having a military ID or a concealed handgun permit. Texas also makes it easy for the elderly over 65. There are special provisions to be able to vote without additional identification. And we have provisional voting, as I understand it, where you can go vote and you have a period of time afterwards to provide the necessary identification. So I think Texas has made it relatively easy. Look, voting is a fundamental right. It may be a little bit inconvenient to get identification, but in my judgment, it's well worth it. When I recently moved to Tennessee, it was important for me to be able to vote in this recent election, and so I went and presented my photo identification and got my voter registration card. So, we want to make it as easy as possible, as convenient as possible, but we, the fact that it may be a little bit inconvenient, in my judgment, should not be a detriment, a discouragement to people to make the effort to to register to vote.
Oh, I agree.
Vote on Election Day.
And Judge Gonzales, a final question. This goes up now to a 3-judge panel, does it not? They're going to take a look at this and make some kind of final decision?
Well, Texas has the ability to get administrative review or judicial review. They went they've gone both routes, and they lost on the administrative review through DOJ. They're now pursuing the judicial review with a 3-judge panel in D.C. That's correct.
All right, very good. Alberto Gonzales, former Attorney General of the United States, joining us here this morning. Judge Gonzales, I thank you for your time, as always, sir.